Hello and welcome to episode 44, Property Mastermind podcast with Hilary Saxton. This week's special guest, as usual guest pretty much, Bob Andersen. Today we're going to be talking about how long does it take to save for a house deposit. Now we've got a great reason that we are having this as our topic today. And you might be thinking, what? These guys do property development education or property development podcasts, and why are they talking about saving for a house deposit? You need to jump in and listen. It's going to be a fabulous episode and you will learn a lot that might make you consider what you're up to now and consider your options. So anyway, that's enough for an intro. Let's jump into episode 44. Hello again and welcome to episode 44, How Long Does It Take to Save for a House Deposit in Australia? We're talking right now and it is April now, early April 2022. Before we get started, as usual, giving away a copy of Property Millionaires Exposed, this book, where Bob has written chapter, I think 21, isn't it, Bob?
Page 120.
Oh, page 120,
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep, I know that one.
Yes, I know. And this
We
week...
can start there, sorry, interrupt.
Start at
page 120.
You're allowed to interrupt. This week, it goes out to Martin Doyle. Martin wrote a fabulous comment on the YouTube channel. So, Martin, this book will be in the post to you probably tomorrow. And I'm sure you're aware of reading about property development. Martin's actually an investor in the Retirement Village project. So, we know Martin. But thank you so much. This is on its way anyway. It is time to move on. Before we do, welcome aboard, Bob, again.
Thank you.
Thanks for making the effort to walk down the hallway.
Yep. Well, I made it again without injury.
And
didn't pull a hammy.
No hammy.
Didn't trip over.
And as usual, you've got your podcasting clothes on. That means top half dressed. It's like Zooming, isn't it?
Enough of that.
Yes.
You like my board shorts?
Yeah, exactly. Her board shorts on the bottom. But talking about how long does it take to save the deposit in Australia right now for a house. And the reason we've got this podcast today is due to an email I received this week from Domain. And I'm sure plenty of you who listen to this podcast probably subscribe to them. And I don't even always read it. I just love the subject line. And I thought, oh, that's worth having a look at. So, Bob, I forwarded it to Bob and we had a chat about it. Yeah. And just, what do you take on that, Bob? There were some really interesting facts.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that didn't surprise me, or wouldn't surprise anybody for that matter, is that because of the house growth we've had, particularly last year, it takes longer. Because we haven't seen much wages growth at all, but we've seen quite a jump in the value of houses. So initially the report's based on...
Hang on, that's an understatement. Quite a jump.
Quite a jump,
Whew,
I know.
The biggest jump in forever.
Whoa, yeah, pretty much. And so it's obvious that to save a deposit, being a percentage of that is going to take longer.
Yes.
It's not like, imagine wage growth equaling house growth last year. We'd all be,
Crikey, that'd be
not that I work for wages, but I mean, everyone would be rolling in money, wouldn't they? If you had like a 25% increase in your wages.
But wouldn't that be great for everything? People would be spending more. And
yeah,
it would be great.
Yeah, it'd be great. But, well, it'd be very inflationary.
No, yeah.
You'd find interest rates would take off massively. The RBA trying to control inflation if that happened. But anyway, it didn't. And hence the importance of the subject. The fact is, it is tougher. And what can you do about it? Well, we'll probably touch on what you can do about it a little bit later in your podcast. So, yeah. So
I see you printed out some stats, which I am grateful for because...
I'm more grateful than you are because I could never remember them. And just in case you ask me, what is it based on, or tell me what's happening in Brisbane or Sydney.
All of that's coming, Bob. What is this based on? Yeah, so you've printed out. Yeah,
so this particular report from Domain, it's based on, obviously got to have some parameters. So it's based on I'll just tell you rather than get it wrong, if you don't mind my looking down here a little bit. So what it's about, it's the time taken for a couple, so not a single, a couple.
I read that.
To save a 20% deposit on an entry-priced house.
And when I read the article, it said if you were single, you could double that time. Crikey.
Well,
I know that's not exactly true.
Yeah,
because
yeah, I mean,
accumulation, but that's
you
what the
could,
report did say.
unless you're single and earn as much money as the average couple.
Maybe it's
They got to
averages.
work on averages and
Yes.
means anyway. Otherwise, everybody's circumstances are obviously different. So it's the time taken for a couple to save a 20% deposit on an entry-level house. Now, the report assumes that buyers at 25 to 34 years of age, that they are saving 20% each month without receiving any other financial help. So no help from mum and dad or any other schemes that are going on. And they're talking about an entry-level price is based upon the 25th percentile, so basically the bottom 25, the mean of the bottom 25% of values, I imagine. That price happens to equal $470,000 in any event. But it's going to be different everywhere. Sydney having the highest valued houses compared to somewhere else like Perth, well, yeah, it's going to be a bit different. Interestingly enough, I'll just grab a couple of cities if that's okay. So,
Are you asking me?
yeah, what's your podcast? I'm your guest.
No. You're always my guest.
I'm your guest everywhere. So what's happened is at the moment in Sydney, for that 25 to 34-year-old couple to save 20%, it's 8 years and 1 month to save the deposit. And it's gone up 18 months. So when we say 8 years and 1 month, previously, if you take 18 months off that, I'm not going to try and work it out, I suppose it's 6 years and 7 months or whatever it is, it's jumped that much. It's jumped that much in a year. So quite a big jump. And as expected, that's what we thought it would be. The 5-year change has been that 18 months. So pretty well all the changes happened in the last year, which makes sense because, prices were fairly static. I mean, if you think of a place like Sydney, they sort of peaked in 2017. They went back a bit, then they caught back up just before COVID. It was almost back, and then COVID sort of flatlined. So, yes. But anyway, just a quickie. I'll just rip through a couple of these.
18 months. Ooh,
So in Sydney, it takes 8 years and 1 month to save that deposit. Melbourne, 6 years and 6 months. Brisbane, 4 years and 10 months. Remember that we got a couple of things vary, I suppose, not the least of which is pricing. Perth, 3 years. Hobart. Canberra, where's Canberra? Yeah, 7 years, 1 month, because Canberra had the massive growth, something like 34% growth last year. So that's a biggie, 7 years and 1 month. The lowest is probably Perth, 3 years and 7 months. Remembering that Perth bottomed out in, I think it was about June 2014, and it sat there for a long time pretty much, and it's only recovered in recent times. So that's
bottomed out.
That's a long time. Like if you want to read the absolute nitty-gritty of it all, you can Google up the Domain report. But that's interesting. And what you gauge out of that is it takes quite a while, many years in fact, to save up the deposit. But in the last 12 months, particularly 2021, it just got a lot longer by 18 months.
But when you think that 18 months there has basically been no change ever. So that massive climb in time is actually quite monumental.
Yeah, and that 18 months is Sydney, which is the highest priced.
Yes.
As I said, Perth being on the opposite end of the scale, it's only changed by a month because it hasn't had that price growth. It's had some, but it's coming off a terribly low base. Its previous high was in June 14. It's only sort of gotten back there.
Which makes cities like Brisbane, which is really popular right now, quite, I suppose, popular because the wages are very similar in Sydney as they are in Brisbane. So
Sydney's
speeding
a bit more, but it has to be.
Yes, but not hugely.
Not in comparison
No.
to the property variations. It's not. The time to save a deposit is probably like at least 50% more in Sydney than Brisbane, but obviously the wages are nothing like that, they're just a bit more.
So, Bob, this is including the possible grants that are available and the potential for...
not this one.
Oh, this
it's
is
just based on that flat couple 20%.
Okay, yep.
And the mean price on that bottom 25%. But that does raise something else, I guess. A couple of things. We're talking about houses. So what about things like units or townhouses where they haven't had that price growth? So has that gotten easier or harder than houses? And suppose if you think about it, the answer is obvious.
It's coming.
Well, it is. I mean, we had the growth in house values was quite a bit more than the growth in townhouse and apartment values.
It's about land right now, isn't it?
Yeah, and houses sit on land. And so as a result, it hasn't gone up as much, but it's gone up. You still have to save for longer. Just a couple of figures for those that are interested. Remember, Sydney is currently 8 years and 1 month to save up for deposit for a house. It's 5 years and 6 months
Right.
to save up the deposit for well, what they got here is, I suppose townhouses and apartments, medium density style stuff. So, and that's because they're cheaper. And the gap between the value of a townhouse and a house has widened quite a lot last year when houses really took off and the others didn't take up so much.
And I suppose, that group, Bob, that group of 25 to 34, was that the group we're looking at right now? They're more likely going to be having children, more likely, not in every case. So the idea of a house more appeals because they like that backyard sort of outsidey feel in general, if we are definitely generalising, but it's more the case, so they're more likely to be looking for houses, wouldn't they?
Well, but they particularly look for houses when they're like starting a family, or at least, even if the second one's on the way. Because, don't ask me the demographics, but I know people get married later, when they're older these days, and back, when I was young. Whenever that was.
Do you remember back to that?
No. But, I know, over a period of time, people marry later in life, for lots of reasons,
Women are working longer.
Yeah, they're more career-minded
absolutely.
than they were in my day, and that's a good thing. So,
and people they're working longer as well, so it probably speeds all that up.
Yeah. And, of course, there's a lot more help around these days with childcare, and even flexible work hours, those sorts of things. But I guess that's
But it's also a social norm, isn't it? It's acceptable for the female to be the breadwinner.
Oh, I love the idea. I'm all in favour of it.
You keep telling me that all the time.
Yeah. I'm particularly in favour of that model. If perhaps you've already had your kids and they're off your hands, or you're not planning to have any. I think it's a tremendous model. I want to see more of it in my own life. No, we're pretty good. We're sort of, it's pretty much 50-50 around these parts.
Pretty balanced.
Although not on the cooking front, I'd have to say. But anyway, that's totally getting off subject.
Yeah,
now.
We don't want to open. I think we opened that can of worms at about episode 3 or something. Yeah.
So there you go. Anyway, back to this, having had a waffle for about 4 minutes. I hope everyone found that entertaining. Yeah. Not just waffle. But there you go, Sydney. As I said, houses 8 year 1, 5 year 6 on say townhouses, let's say, or medium density. Melbourne. 6 years 6 on houses, but only 4 years 4 on the apartments. Brisbane, we're talking about Brizzy. There we go. Not a lot of difference actually.
Because the price difference is so
the
much,
gap isn't as great. The biggest gap between houses and townhouse values since that jump has been in Sydney. Yep. And that gap is doubled on average.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's got a lot. You could say then townhouses and apartments have got a lot of catching up to do, so... that's another subject.
There's a wee tip, I suppose. You could almost think, hey?
Yeah.
If you're looking at...
And what's the least? Probably... where's my old mate Perth? Perth was the lowest on the houses at 3 years 7 months, and they're 2 years 6 months for units. So, yeah. So, I mean, once again... it's taking longer to save a deposit no matter what you're going to buy. That's sort of what it says.
Bob, how does that affect the older demographic who perhaps maybe they got divorced or they've had a business that went wrong and, they're almost starting again? What will be the impact there for people over that age of 34, maybe the people in their 50s and 60s?
Harder.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's plenty of people like that. Like we said before, this particular domain report was based on 25 to 35-year-olds, but it's really talking about...
But the whole world isn't 25 to 34.
It's talking about saving a deposit for a house. It didn't say saving a deposit for your first house, although that's a different subject. And we could talk about first home owners if you want. But just talking about the older people... who, as you say, may have lost a lot of their money in a divorce or a bad business or ill health, losing a job for a longer period of time. All these things happen. It's life. It's terrible when it happens, but, got to get through it. So what do you do then? Well, you might be in just depending, you might be in higher wage bracket where you can save money faster. I mean, it could be a professional who's, maybe lost it for ill health or divorce, not because your business collapsed or anything like that. So you might still be able to recoup from earnings, if you're on a really good salary. That's a possibility. But then you've got age against you because banks don't fall over themselves to lend money to 50 and 60
I don't think at the moment banks are falling over themselves or anything, are they?
They've done a lot, no.
No, I think they're not working too quick.
Bit introverted
at the moment, yes.
So it is harder in terms of an age. I mean, if a 60-year-old person wants to save up from ground zero for a house, they better be earning... But they want to be earning some decent money. Ideally have some money in super, because that's what the banks often look at when they're lending to older people. Is your super, because that's a good way. That's the exit strategy. Saying, well, look, you're probably not going to live another 30 years if you're 66 or something. So when I won't give you a 30-year loan, how are you going to pay this loan out? And the answer could be, well, I've got 400 grand in super or something. And so, yeah, but that's a finance sort of thing. I'm getting a little bit off track. But what I'm saying is, if you're older and you're starting off to save a deposit for a house, you may be earning more money or you may not. If you had a business collapse, for instance, and that's why you don't have money, then you might be struggling for income. Trying to get back in the workforce or trying to start a new business where you need 2 years' figures, that sort of thing can be a bit tough, and it's often the age that's against you. But yeah, I mean, that demographic you mentioned a moment ago, first homeowners, they're getting a hand. Because what we talked about, the first part of that Domain report, was the 25 to 34-year-olds who aren't getting assistance from anybody.
Oh, but there are the people that are getting assistance.
Yeah, and we're talking about like grants, like the first
time. Clayton Tierney.
Tell me about him.
First home buyer club.
A good mate of ours.
Yep.
Well, whenever I think of first home buyers, I don't know why, I suddenly see Clayton's face. And Clayton's not a first home buyer, but he's...
he assists people well.
Well, he does. He owns the First Home Buyer Club.
And Brisbane.
But I think he helps people everywhere.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah, even though his office is situated in the city in Brisbane. But he's a specialist of putting first home buyers into new properties.
Yeah.
Getting them going, giving them a leg up. And so he's an expert over all the grants and finance and all sorts of angles, and knows.
Follow him on social media. He's always taking it. He's always taking a new. You see him on a photo with like a young couple with a baby on their hip, standing at the door or something. Yeah, he's always doing that.
He loves doing that. I mean, you got to like what you're doing. He does.
Yeah,
he loves putting young couples, if they are young, putting people into first homes. I suppose they don't have to be young necessarily. You could be 40 and it's your first home. If you'd rented all your life, or you've been overseas, working in Singapore for 20 years and you never bought a house in Australia. Lots of reasons. Anyway, enough plugs for Clayton Tierney for the First Home Buyer Club. I'm not going to mention his name anymore. But that government assistance does help.
Yes.
In terms of saving your deposit. And fair enough, our friends from Domain did put together a table to make life easy for me, so I didn't have to do like 2 years of research. And the help is a lot. So, I mean, there's the, and I'm no expert in first home owner world, but there's the possibility of getting the 5% deposit. Don't ask me completely for the name of the scheme, but basically it's open to first homeowners who can no longer have to have a 20% deposit with mortgage insurance. That's pretty expensive, mortgage insurance, when you drop below a 20% deposit. The government actually takes over and guarantees the loan that normally the insurers would do. They underwrite it, and so there's an opportunity for first home buyers to buy with a 5% deposit. And so saving up the 5% deposit is a hell of a lot easier than saving up 20%. And then there's the grants themselves, and that varies with each state. It's a state grant, and a lot of them are geared towards new builds to encourage first home owners to buy new properties, because that stimulates the economy more, everything that goes into a new house. But here's a few numbers, because I know how much you love numbers. So
I like facts. You like numbers.
Well, the numbers better be facts, or they're just
rubbish.
Rubbish.
You found them. Let's
no
go
rubbish.
through these.
Just numbers. Okay, here we go. Sydney. Now remember, Sydney was 8 years and 1 month.
Yes.
When you have to save it all up for yourself. But if you use the 5% deposit scheme, 2 years.
Wow.
8 years and 1 month down to 2 years.
Amazing.
I'll just shoot a few more because
Yeah.
you got listeners all over the country. Melbourne, which was 6 years and 6 months, down to 1 year 7 months.
Whoa.
Brisbane, which is 4 years and 10 months without help, 1 year and 3 months with help.
Wow.
Adelaide was 4 years 7, 1 year 2. Perth, that we plucked out before, which was 3 years and 7 months, which is the least amount of time to save a deposit for a house, from 3 years 7 to 11 months.
Wow.
It's under a year. So that's interesting. I mean, there's the other cities are there. They do a bit of regional. I mean, I don't want to sound like a parrot just sitting here reading out numbers.
No.
The report's available.
What's interesting there, Bob, is that the amount of assistance that is available to people who qualify.
Yeah.
And it's just really finding out who you qualify.
Yeah.
But let's move on from that, really, because that's the...
That's the retail world.
Yes, exactly. Let's talk about, and probably less likely to be the first home buyer people, but could be, but more likely people who perhaps just want to make a bit more money. Let's talk about property development.
Well,
And how that...
We could tie it up with this, I guess.
Yes.
And say, as a developer, I mean, we don't dwell in the retail world where most people have to by choice. We create properties at raw cost. And so why not take advantage of that? And that's what we do. Whether we just develop and sell and take a great wad of cash for our profit, or whether we perhaps even develop our own properties, or we could even develop properties for our family members. I mean, it's wide open.
Yes.
It's wide open. So what we're talking about is saving a deposit for a property, and that's in the retail world. But as a developer, let's say, I'll keep it really simple. Let's say what's the smallest sort of development that we ever have anything to do with?
Well, it's really just a splitter,
1
to 2.
Yeah, 1 and 2. 2-lot subdivision. Let's start there. Good work. So let's say it's a 2-lot subdivision. What can we do with that? Well, heaps of stuff. We just sell the land. But let's say we build. Let's say we build a house on both. So we got a block of land, we cut it into 2 lots, we build a house on each lot. Whether we build 2 houses at the same time or one at a time doesn't really matter. We could sell one, we get a wad of cash, profit, and we can move into one. As long as it's structured properly and you've got a paper trail and you talk to your clever accountant first, that could be your principal place of residence, the one you move into. So you created a principal place of residence, but you've done it at cost. So if you had to pay retail, you'd be, there'd be a component in there for the developer's profit, there'd be stamp duty and so forth. You don't pay stamp duty when you develop because it's staying in your name, it's not being transferred. So what I'm saying is you get it at raw cost. So you get it at cost, but the bank values it at retail. The difference between the two is your profit, and that becomes your deposit. You also sold one. Now, you have to pay tax on the one you sell, but what if you took the after-tax dollars from that one and added that in as your deposit? So you got the after-tax profit. This is a bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah, I can see. I think you're struggling with that, Bob.
You got the after-tax profit from the one you sell. Hang on to that. Use that as part of your deposit. And then you got the profit from the one you didn't sell that you use as your deposit. And all of a sudden, you've created quite a chunk of money as a deposit. You haven't had to save it. You haven't had to go and work and pay tax and bleed for it. And there it is there. There it is. And it could have been a 4-pack of townhouses. Even better. Kept 1, sold 3, take the profit from 3 after tax and put it in there.
And you know what? We have a very mixed crowd, or what's the word I'm after, of people that
Listeners.
listeners that listen to this. And some of you right now will be thinking, but I don't really have the money to get started. And I just want you to know right now that in the last 2 weeks, we have had 2 mentoring students who don't fit into that age bracket, who definitely fit into that bracket of divorce or businesses went wrong. They fit into that bracket, and they have gone into properties with no money of their own, with an investor where they share the profit. So that is a very real thing, and we do that a lot with people, with people that we've educated and work with, but you need to know that it is possible. And I think that people just don't realise what is possible for them. It's like, oh, it's all right for that person, or they've already got money. We've got all the excuses in the world because we allow our head to tell us negative stories, or, I'm not lucky enough or good enough, or all of those things. But it is very possible that this is possible for you.
Well, even on something like a duplex, if you incorporate an investor into that and you share the profit, you're making the profit out of one of those without putting any money in at all. That's a pretty good return on zero.
Yeah.
And you can then use your profit as part of your deposit on that one. And you haven't even had to come up with the money in the first place. The first time you have to come up with money is when you're basically taking over your new townhouse using your profit as your deposit. Now, maybe you could do that once, and maybe your deposit isn't 20%. Maybe it's a little bit less than that, but you can jump in straight away and use mortgage insurance. Or you could do a second one, and then you got more than the deposit.
So maybe,
but it gets you going. Gets you off the ground.
Yeah, I'm hoping that right now, if some people are listening thinking, oh, how do I do this? I want to do this.
Well, I've only been teaching it since 1989.
Okay. Yeah, but not everyone was in the room when you were teaching, or not everyone has bought your
Not
course.
everyone was born in 1989.
No, not everyone was. I certainly was, but I'm sure there are a few people.
You were just
born. Oh no,
you're in nappies.
There were plenty of people born, I'm sure. So yes, there are strategies available for people who are thinking, I've missed a boat, I can't get into property now. And as we started off with, how much it does take to buy a property, but creating your own at cost with limited or no money in, should you not have any money, is definitely possible for many people.
And that could be at any age.
Yes.
It could be our 25 to 34-year-old cohort, or it could be 50 or 60.
Oh, I'm thinking of somebody right now who is definitely probably older than that, and you would be very surprised if you heard her say, I'm a property developer.
Yeah.
So.
I've had, we've had people in our mentoring group develop. I can think of one guy at 72 years of age, did his first development. So, yeah, it's no excuse, age. But saving up for your first home.
It doesn't have to be your handbrake.
No.
And I think that's
Don't let it be one.
That's where we wanted this podcast to go. It was very interesting stats. For me, it was a bit of a, whoa, that's crazy, Bob. Check this out. And we thought it was a bit of a great topic to share with everybody, so they realised that, that owning property is possible for everybody. If you want to own property, there's no reason you don't have to.
No, there is a solution to the 8 years and 1 month, or the 5 years and 6 months.
Yes.
There is a much quicker solution.
And then is the pinnacle of all property strategies, as Bob Andersen says, property development.
Hey.
Well, I think that's. I think we've covered enough there, Bob. I think that, the stats that you've shared, and just knitting that together, how we managed to, so people could see where we were heading with this, was very useful.
Yeah, it's a good report. Thanks to Domain for their report. But point is, like, we got smarter, better, faster ways of doing things in the property development world.
Yeah, better, faster, stronger. Sounds like Steve Austin, for those of you who remember the $6 million man. Remember that? Better, faster and stronger.
He's not around anymore for old.
What was his name?
Lee
Major?
Major.
Was it?
Lee Major.
There you go.
And Farah's not around. Anyway, off subject.
Is she not around either?
No.
Okay, we are definitely off subject. Hey, before we wind up for the day, we have a property get-together on May the 7th in Brisbane. So if you would like to come and learn about creative strategies where you use your money, other people's money, however you want to put it together so you can get involved in property development, Bob will be opening that door, and we will be having a really valuable discussion on that, as well as a few other things that
guests that day as well.
A few guests that day. So it's from 2 till 5. And there'll be a link below that you can click in and register for that. You can either register through the Meetup app, or you can register privately through our emails. But I'm sure you're getting our emails, so we would love you to come along to that. Also, we have a
masterclass the following week, Saturday the 14th.
Yes, from
4 hours.
4 hours, 9 till 1.
9 to 1 for East Coast time.
That's it. We're all on the same time then, I think.
Well,
not quite.
Not Perth and
sorry.
South Australia and everywhere else.
Yeah, sorry, East Coast
East
time.
Coast.
Yes, so from 9 till 1, a 4-hour masterclass, and that has launched many a property millionaire.
Free one too.
It's free. and you would be surprised.
It's launched plenty of development career, that one.
Absolutely. So you will definitely want to be at that. And you can register for that as well. The link will be below. And we have a 3-day workshop online coming up in June that you might want to register for as well. So there you go. We've got some pretty good stuff coming up.
Plenty happening.
And more to come. So we hope you found that as useful, today's podcast. And we will catch up with you next week.
Bye.
Bye.